Something flipped in season 8, and it did not come with a blow-up or a screaming match. It happened quietly, and once you notice it, you cannot unsee it. The sister everyone worried about suddenly looks steady, and the sister everyone trusted looks like she is slipping, so ask yourself this. When did Amy stop being the strong one, and Tammy stop being the problem? The wild part is how calm the shift feels. No sirens, no meltdown music, just awkward pauses, tight smiles, and energy that feels off in a way the show never explains. One minute you are watching the same old dynamic you have seen for years, and the next minute, the power in the room feels different. And once you catch this moment, every scene after hits different, so stay with me. For seasons, viewers were trained how to feel. Amy was the organizer, the caretaker, the sister holding everything together while raising kids, managing chaos, and keeping the family moving. Tammy was framed as the liability, explosive, resistant, someone everyone had to manage. The show made it simple. Root for Amy, worry about Tammy. That formula worked for years, and most of us never questioned it. But season 8 opens, and something does not line up. Amy laughs, then stops. She reacts fast, then pulls back. Her patience runs out without warning. Tammy, on the other hand, speaks slower. She pauses. She chooses silence. She steps away from conflict instead of charging straight into it. Nobody announces this change. It just sits there, uncomfortable. And that quiet discomfort is the clue most people missed at first. This is not about weight loss numbers or surgery milestones. Those moments exist, but they are not driving the tension. The tension comes from behavior. Tammy no longer needs to be managed. She shows up. She listens. She disengages when things get heated. That alone would be a win in any other season. Here, it creates friction, because when the person who needed help stops needing it, the helper has to face something new. Amy seems caught in that moment. Her role feels shaky. She interrupts more. She looks overwhelmed even when support sits right next to her. When Tammy stays calm, Amy appears sharper by comparison. Not worse as a person, but louder in contrast. This contrast is where the season quietly starts its war, and it is not the kind you can yell your way through. The show does not say any of this out loud. Instead, scenes end early. Confessionals feel clipped. Emotional reactions appear without build-up. Viewers are left filling in blanks. And the longer the season goes, the harder it becomes to ignore that something is being tiptoed around. The edit feels careful, almost nervous, like the story wants to go somewhere the show is not ready to follow. Longtime fans picked up on it fast. Social media lit up with side-by-side clips. Old seasons versus now. Amy then. Amy now. Tammy then. Tammy now. People noticed how often Tammy steps back while Amy presses forward. How often Amy frames herself as overwhelmed while pushing away accountability. This is the moment when viewers stop watching passively and start watching closely. None of this means Amy is a villain. Far from it. Publicly known stress sits heavy on her life. Divorce, single motherhood, financial pressure, constant filming. All of that matters. The issue is not her pain. The issue is how the show refuses to connect those dots clearly, leaving her reactions floating without context. That silence makes viewers uneasy. By the end of these early episodes, one thing becomes clear. The old rules no longer fit. The strong sister is not standing tall. The struggling sister is not spiraling, and the show built on those roles looks unsure what to do next. Because when a reality show loses control of its own story, the truth tends to surface anyway. This does not feel like sister drama anymore. It feels like the start of something bigger, a system shifting, a narrative cracking, and a family caught in the middle of a change nobody prepared for, including the cameras. Tammy walks into season 8 like someone who already fought the battle everyone else keeps expecting. She does not rush her words. She does not raise her voice. When tension creeps in, she leans back instead of leaning forward. That alone feels shocking if you remember earlier seasons. This calm is not loud, but it quietly changes every scene that follows, so pay attention here. Watch how she handles conflict now. Someone pushes. She pauses. Someone presses harder. She pulls away. On screen, Tammy talks openly about structure, about sticking to routines, about therapy helping her slow reactions. These are not grand speeches. They are small choices repeated again and again. Silence instead of snapping. Distance instead of drama. It feels boring at first. Then, it feels unsettling because the show trained viewers to expect chaos from Tammy. When chaos does not show up, the tension has nowhere obvious to go. And when the usual pressure valve disappears, the room starts feeling heavier, not lighter. This is where the mistake happens. Tammy's progress gets framed like a win everyone should celebrate. But inside the family, progress changes the balance. Tammy no longer needs someone hovering. She no longer needs reminders. She no longer needs rescuing. That removes a role someone else depended on. When a hierarchy shifts, relief does not always come first. Confusion does. Amy feels that confusion, not in speeches, not in confessions, in reactions. Her patience runs thin fast, her tone sharpens. She jumps into conversations quickly, sometimes over Tammy, sometimes past the point where help was even asked for. These moments feel small on their own, but stacked together, they start telling a story the show never spells out. Tammy stays composed, and that composure throws everything into contrast. Amy looks stressed even when the situation does not call for it. Tammy looks grounded even when old triggers appear. It is not about good versus bad behavior. It is about mismatch. One person adjusted. The other is still trying to catch up. The camera lingers on Tammy listening. The camera cuts away from Amy reacting. That choice matters. Scenes end early. Conversations drop off mid-emotion. Confessionals hint at feelings without letting them land. This is where viewers start sensing missing pieces, and missing pieces create suspicion. Tammy does not gloat. She does not lecture. She does not throw growth in anyone's face. In fact, she often steps back when Amy spirals. Some viewers read that as distance. Others see restraint. Either way, it changes how Tammy reads on screen. She is no longer the liability. She is the quiet one in the room. And that quiet exposes something uncomfortable. Amy's identity was built around being needed, being the stable one, being the fixer. When Tammy does not need fixing, Amy has nowhere to stand. Her frustration feels misdirected, like energy searching for a purpose that vanished. This is the tension nobody names, and it hums under every interaction. The show does not explain this shift, it softens it. Stress gets blamed. Timing gets blamed. Circumstances get blamed. Those explanations are not wrong, but they are incomplete. Viewers can feel that incompleteness. It shows up in how often Amy's reactions seem bigger than the moment, how often Tammy disengages instead of responding. Off camera, fans start hearing whispers, not rumors, but patterns. Talk of stronger emotions earlier in filming. Talk of scenes trimmed down. Talk of words softened in the edit. None of this is confirmed on screen, and that silence is the point. When a show avoids clarity, the audience fills the gap themselves. By the end of this stretch, it becomes hard to believe what aired is the full picture. Tammy's calm feels earned. Amy's struggle feels heavier than what we are allowed to see. And the imbalance between those two realities starts feeling intentional, like something was toned down for a reason. Because if what made it to air already feels uncomfortable, imagine how intense it must have been before the cuts. By this point, the discomfort stops feeling accidental. Scenes do not just feel tense, they feel unfinished. Conversations end before reactions land. Confessionals trail off right when emotion starts to sharpen. Someone looks upset, then the moment cuts away, and the next scene acts like nothing happened. When this keeps repeating, it stops feeling like coincidence and starts feeling like design. Longtime viewers noticed first, because they know the rhythm of this show. Earlier seasons lingered. They let arguments breathe. They stayed in the room when feelings got messy. Season 8 does the opposite. It pulls back. It trims. It smooths. Emotional reactions appear without the buildup that used to explain them. Amy looks overwhelmed, but the trigger is missing. Tammy disengages, but the tension that caused it is gone. The result is a story full of reactions without causes. That gap makes the audience uneasy. People are not confused because nothing is happening. They are confused because something clearly happened and they were not allowed to see it. And when viewers feel edited around, trust starts to crack. Online, fans began doing what fans always do when something feels off. They compared. Clips from older seasons popped up next to current ones. Tammy yelling then. Tammy silent now. Amy steady then. Amy reactive now. The contrast was undeniable, and more importantly, it was consistent. This was not one bad day or one awkward episode. It was a pattern stretching across scenes and weeks. Social media did not explode with wild accusations. It was quieter than that. Observational. People pointing out timestamps, asking why certain conversations ended early, noting how often confessionals cut away mid-sentence. That kind of reaction usually means the audience feels respected enough to analyze, but not respected enough to be told the full truth. What makes this more complicated is intent. This does not look like producers inventing drama. It looks like producers trying to soften it, protecting someone from backlash, preserving a familiar image, keeping the audience aligned with roles they already understand. That instinct is not unusual in reality TV. The problem is that partial truth rarely lands as neutral. By trimming context, the edit leaves viewers guessing. Amy's stress reads harsher without explanation. Tammy's calm reads colder without background. Neither portrayal feels complete. Instead of guiding understanding, the edit creates confusion. And confusion does more damage than honesty ever could. You can see it in how conversations feel disconnected. A tense exchange happens. Cut. Next scene, everyone is calm, but the emotional residue is still there. Faces are tight, voices are guarded. The fallout exists, even if the cause was removed. The show tries to move on, but the audience cannot, because the emotional math does not add up. This is where distrust sets in, not toward the sisters, but toward the story being told. Viewers stop asking what happened between Amy and Tammy and start asking what was taken out. They stop debating sides and start debating edits. That shift matters. Once the audience questions the lens, the narrative loses control. Earlier seasons built loyalty by showing the ugly parts fully. Pain made sense because it was contextualized. Growth felt earned because setbacks were visible. Season 8 withholds just enough to break that contract. It asks viewers to accept emotional conclusions without showing emotional journeys. That might protect feelings in the short term, but it weakens the story. There is also a timing issue. Tammy's transformation arrives after years of build-up. Viewers are ready to understand it deeply. When the show rushes past the hard parts, it feels like a missed opportunity. Instead of clarity, we get distance. Instead of insight, we get implication. And implication invites interpretation, whether the show wants it or not. Amy's portrayal suffers the most from this approach. Her reactions feel amplified because the stress behind them is muted. Tammy's restraint feels stark because the tension provoking it is hidden. Both women end up flattened by the edit, not elevated by it. The audience senses that imbalance even if they cannot name it at first. By now, the question is no longer about sister rivalry. It is about storytelling choices. Did the edit actually protect anyone, or did it quietly create a harsher judgment by stripping away context? Did smoothing the truth make the situation safer, or did it leave viewers filling gaps with assumptions? Because when honesty is softened too much, it stops being kind and starts being confusing. And confusion is where trust goes to die. By the time you step back from the edits and the reactions, what remains is not a villain story. It is a collapse story. And in my opinion, Amy's unraveling in season 8 makes far more sense when you stop isolating her behavior and start looking at the weight she was carrying. Publicly, her life was changing fast. A divorce that did not just end a marriage, but upended stability, suddenly parenting alone, on camera, while still expected to be the calm center of the family. Financial pressure openly discussed, layered on top of constant filming and online judgment. None of that is hidden. It is acknowledged. Just briefly. Almost in passing. And that is where the problem begins. The show mentions these stressors, then moves on. There is no clear line drawn between pressure and reaction, no space given to let those realities breathe. Viewers are left to connect dots on their own. When pain is shown without context, it risks being mistaken for personality. Amy appears overwhelmed in moments that feel disproportionate on screen. Short patience. Defensive energy, interruptions that land harder than intended. Allegedly, those reactions were not random. They look like someone operating beyond capacity. But without narrative framing, they read as attitude rather than exhaustion. Empathy matters here, but so does accountability. Stress explains behavior. It does not erase impact. Amy's reactions affect Tammy. They affect the family dynamic. They shape how viewers perceive both sisters. Acknowledging pain does not mean excusing harm. It means understanding where it came from, so it does not get misnamed. What feels unfair is how little room the show gives for that understanding. Amy's inner world is reduced to flashes, a tearful confessional cut short, a mention of stress without exploration, a heavy moment followed by a quick transition. Those editing choices do not protect her, they flatten her. In earlier seasons, the show leaned into struggle. It sat with discomfort. It trusted the audience to hold complexity. Season 8 does the opposite. It seems afraid of going too deep with Amy's reality. As a result, viewers see the symptoms without the diagnosis, and when that happens, judgment fills the gap. Public reaction follows predictable lines. Some defend her fiercely, others criticize her harshly. Both sides argue from incomplete information. That split is not organic. It is created by omission. If the full weight of Amy's situation were shown clearly, reactions would likely look very different. In my opinion, the saddest part is not the conflict between sisters. It is the isolation. Amy is surrounded by people, cameras, and conversations, yet her internal struggle feels unseen. Tammy's growth becomes visible and celebrated, while Amy's deterioration happens quietly, almost off to the side. That contrast can feel cruel. One sister rises into stability, the other sinks under expectation. And the system that once framed Amy as the strong one never adjusted when she stopped being able to carry that role. Amy did not fail in a vacuum. She was still being filmed, still being edited, still being positioned inside a narrative that no longer fit her reality. When the story did not evolve with her, it left her exposed. And that is the chilling part, because when a system keeps rolling while a person breaks, the damage is not just personal, it is structural. Somewhere along the way, the moral compass flipped, and it did not flip loudly. Tammy used to be the one criticized for avoiding responsibility, for shutting down, for stepping away when things got hard. That behavior was framed as immaturity. as failure, as proof she was not ready. Now, in season 8, that same behavior reads differently. It looks like regulation, like boundaries, like survival. At the same time, Amy starts receiving the kind of criticism Tammy once carried. Viewers call her reactive, defensive, overwhelmed. They point to moments where she snaps, interrupts, or seems emotionally unavailable. The irony is impossible to miss. The traits once condemned in Tammy are now praised, while the traits once praised in Amy are now questioned. That reversal is not about personality, it is about context. Tammy's calm does not exist in isolation. It sits inside rooms filled with tension. When she stays quiet, the silence gets louder. When she disengages, the emotional weight does not disappear. It shifts. And often, it lands on Amy. That makes Amy's reactions stand out more, not because they are uniquely extreme, but because they are happening next to someone who is visibly regulated. This is not a good sister versus bad sister story. It is stability versus overload. One person operating with tools that finally work, another running on empty while still expected to perform. When those two states share the same space, contrast does the storytelling. Fair counterpoints matter here. Filming is exhausting. Long days. Repeated conversations. Emotional moments reshot from different angles. Add personal stress to that environment, and reactions will naturally intensify. Editing compresses time, making bad moments feel closer together than they were. All of that is true. But those explanations only go so far. They do not fully explain why Amy's stress feels underexplored, while Tammy's growth feels overly streamlined. They do not explain why emotional triggers are cut while reactions remain. They do not explain why the audience is left doing narrative math the show used to do for them. At some point, production realities stop being a shield and start being part of the problem. Because when pressure is constant, the way it is framed becomes a moral choice. Tammy benefits from this shift without asking for it. Her restraint looks powerful. Her silence looks intentional. Amy suffers from it without clarity. Her overwhelm looks erratic. Her frustration looks personal. Neither portrayal is fully fair. Both are shaped by what the audience is allowed to see. What accelerates everything is speed. Public sympathy does not move slowly anymore. Viewers react in real time. Clips circulate before episodes finish airing. Opinions form before context arrives. By the time the show tries to course correct, the narrative has already hardened. Tammy's arc had years to develop. Amy's downturn did not. One was gradual and well documented. The other was sudden and fragmented. That imbalance gives Tammy narrative momentum and leaves Amy exposed. And momentum is something editing cannot easily undo once it escapes the screen. The show seems caught between two instincts. Protect Amy by softening the truth, or show more and risk backlash. In choosing restraint, it may have done the opposite. Viewers filled in gaps with harsher assumptions. Silence became suspicion. Shortened scenes became evidence of something being hidden. What is striking is how little time the show had to adapt. The moral shift happened faster than the production cycle. Tammy stabilized. Amy destabilized. The old roles collapsed almost overnight. And a show built on long-term arcs suddenly had no roadmap. At that point, control slips. Not dramatically. Quietly, the audience stops waiting for answers from the screen and starts drawing them independently. Sympathy moves. Criticism sharpens. The story evolves without permission. This is how reality television loses authorship, not through scandal, not through leaks, through lag. The world changes faster than the edit can keep up. And once that happens, the narrative no longer belongs to the network. It belongs to the viewers watching the cracks form in real time. Once trust in the edit starts to slip, the audience changes how it watches. Viewers stop relaxing into the story and start studying it. Body language becomes evidence. Scene order becomes a clue. A pause feels intentional. A cut feels suspicious. At this stage, the show is no longer leading the audience. The audience is interrogating the show. Fans rewind moments not for drama, but for detail. Who crossed their arms first? Who looked away? Who stayed silent too long? They notice when a reaction appears before its cause. They notice when confessionals contradict what just aired. They notice when a tense scene is followed by a strangely calm one with no emotional bridge. None of this requires conspiracy thinking. It only requires pattern recognition. Social posts start getting pulled into the conversation. Not out of context quotes, but timing. A photo posted after filming. A caption that sounds heavier than what aired. An interview where wording feels careful. Fans do not need answers spelled out. They compare tone. They connect dots. And when enough dots connect, a parallel storyline forms whether the show wants it or not. That alternate storyline is quieter, but it feels fuller. In it, Tammy is not redeemed as a hero. She is simply someone who finally got the tools she needed and is using them. In it, Amy is not recast as a villain. She is someone collapsing under layered pressure without enough support. Growth and breakdown are happening at the same time, in the same family, under the same cameras. This version resonates because it matches human experience. People do not evolve one at a time in neat arcs. One person stabilizing can destabilize someone else. Progress in one area can expose weakness in another. Viewers recognize this truth because they live it. The show's version feels thinner by comparison. It separates moments instead of connecting them. It smooths tension instead of explaining it. It asks viewers to accept emotional outcomes without emotional pathways. For an audience that has spent years watching every messy step, that suddenly feels dishonest, even if the intent was protective. What makes the audience version stronger is not that it is dramatic. It is that it allows complexity. No one is reduced to a role. Tammy is allowed restraint without being accused of avoidance. Amy is allowed pain without being stripped of accountability. The story becomes less about blame and more about systems, timing, and pressure. Once viewers adopt that lens, they stop arguing sides and start questioning structure. Why were certain conversations shortened? Why were certain stressors mentioned, but not explored? Why did the show linger on reactions but rush past causes? Those questions do not attack the sisters. They challenge the framework around them. This is the moment a franchise should worry. Because when fans stop trusting what they are shown, they do not stop watching. They watch harder. But they watch differently. Loyalty shifts from the brand to the analysis. Episodes become raw material instead of stories. Reality television survives on an unspoken agreement. The edit may guide, but it does not deceive. Once that agreement feels broken, even slightly, recovery becomes difficult. Every future scene is viewed with skepticism. Every emotional beat is questioned, and skepticism spreads faster than any official narrative ever could. The danger is not backlash. It is disengagement masked as engagement. High discussion, high views, low belief. Fans still tune in, but they no longer surrender to the story. They hold it at arm's length, measuring it against what they think really happened. That puts the show in a fragile position. Correct too much, and it looks defensive. Correct too little, and the alternate storyline hardens. Either way, control is no longer guaranteed. The audience has tasted authorship, and it is hard to take that back. This is bigger than one season or one family. It is about trust. Once viewers believe they understand the people on screen better than the edit does, the power dynamic reverses. The show becomes reactive. The audience becomes authoritative. And that is the warning. Because when fans stop trusting the lens and start trusting themselves instead, a reality franchise does not just wobble. It enters a phase where recovery is no longer about ratings, it is about credibility. By the time season 8 wraps up, viewers are left in a strange place. There are no epic fights that explode across screens. No dramatic confrontations where someone storms out yelling. Instead, there is quiet, a distance between the sisters that feels heavier than any shouting match could. And the more you watch, the more it becomes clear. This season is cold, not because the emotions aren't real, but because the emotions have nowhere to go. You feel the tension in pauses, in silences, in reactions that seem incomplete, and it sticks with you longer than any argument ever could. The conflict is no longer a simple feud. It is about identity, about roles. Amy was the caretaker, the authority, the one who held the family together. Tammy was the dependent, the unpredictable one, the one who needed management. But when those roles vanish, what remains? Who are you if the job you built your life around disappears? That is the unsettling heart of this season. You start to notice that every tear, every quiet sigh, every hesitant word is carrying more than personal drama. It is carrying a sense of displacement and loss. This is why moments that should feel like resolution do not. You watch Tammy calmly step back, Amy visibly struggling, and you sense the imbalance. The camera lingers in ways that feel deliberate, almost accusatory, asking viewers to fill in the blanks. And the blanks are everywhere. Scenes end before the emotion lands. Confessionals stop mid-thought. Arguments are cut off. The result is a patchwork of interactions that gives no full answer, only hints. You are left piecing together a story from fragments, and it hits harder because the silence between the pieces speaks volumes. You realize the show is showing life, but life doesn't come with neatly tied endings. What makes it even more gripping is how public life bleeds into the narrative. Amy's pressures, divorce, raising kids, financial stress, aren't just details. They are the weight behind her reactions, the invisible tug on her patience. Tammy's steps forward are not triumphs. They are shifts in balance that ripple through a family already in tension. Watching it unfold, you can feel the subtle currents of accountability, of restraint, of frustration. It's a reminder that family dramas do not follow scripts, even when cameras try to impose one. And yet, the season does not villainize either sister. That is the genius of its discomfort. This is not about who is right or wrong. It is about what happens when stability collapses. When one person grows, the other's role changes. When expectations are broken, identity feels fragile. The coldness is intentional in a way you cannot unsee. It forces you to sit with the disquiet, to recognize that growth and struggle often coexist in messy, unresolved ways. It challenges the audience to feel rather than judge. By the final episodes, a reckoning emerges. Season 8 is not about healing or resolution. It is about exposure. The cameras catch the friction, the withdrawal, the moments of vulnerability no one asked to be televised. It forces viewers to confront the raw realities of human relationships, the way they shift, break, and reform. Amy and Tammy are not enemies. They are mirrors of each other in a family shaken by change. And the mirrors are unflinching. You notice the small cracks first, and then the larger ones. And by the end, you understand that nothing will look the same again. This is why the season feels like a warning and a revelation at the same time. It exposes what happens when roles collapse, when expectations crumble, and when the narrative itself struggles to keep pace with reality. You leave the screen thinking less about drama and more about the fragility of family, identity, and trust. It lingers in your mind because it refuses to tie itself up neatly. And just when you think the story has stopped, you realize it has only shifted off camera. The aftermath, the conversations, the confrontations, the reconciliations and setbacks may be even messier than what aired. What you watched is only the surface. And if you thought Season 8 was intense, the next chapter promises even more tension, deeper truths, and surprises that could change how you see everything that came before. If you're ready, the next video will take you further into the fallout no one expected, revealing the family's struggles beyond the cameras.